Okay, so let's get started. Good evening to all of you, or good morning, or good afternoon, based on the location from wherever you are joining. Uh, my name is Vijay Kumar Vemula. A little bit about me. I am Azure and Citrix architect, and I'm a trainer as well. With around 14 years of experience purely into infrastructure services, solutioning and designing as well. So that is a little bit about me. And before we actually start, let us try to understand, what is that is expected or what is that we are going to cover uh, as a part of this session. This will be an hour or so, more than an hour session. We'll try to cover uh, most of the topics to an extent within Azure Active Directory to cover the time that whatever we schedule this for, right? Now, this is not an expert level session. It is more an intermediate level session, just to kind of set the things straight before we start. So people, whoever are at the expert level, for you, it might be kind of things that which you might already know, but please bear with me. We'll be coming with few additional sessions to cover some advanced topic as a series of these particular sessions. Okay. Now, without waiting much, let's get started. So the topic for today's discussion is Azure Active Directory, AAD we call it as. Now, okay, give me a minute. Right, so what is that we are going to cover? What is that we are going to see today in this 60 to 90 minutes session? We'll try to understand what Active Directory is, or it's not Active Directory, rather it's Azure Active Directory. So what Azure Active Directory is and where and how we can use it, and what are the different SKUs, stock keeping units we have. We call it as editions. We people call it as SKUs. So whatever we call it as, what are the different editions you have, and how do we manage the identity and access management? How do we do the identity and access management within Azure Active Directory? And of course, there is something called as custom domains. We'll try to understand the requirement. Why do we actually need a custom domain? And we'll try to see it practically. How do we actually create a custom domain? And we'll also try to look at things like integration of your on-premises Active Directory with your Azure AD by using a tool called as AD connector. So these might be like different points for you at this point of time. As we go on discussion, as we discuss, as we move on with the discussion, we'll try to connect these dots so that we'll, at the end of this session, we'll be able to understand, the requirement of each of these when it comes to the Azure Active Directory. Now, to start with, what exactly Azure Active Directory is? So we heard the term called as Active Directory Domain Services, which we use on premises for authentication and authorization, right? So you create user IDs for your users, whoever are on premises, and give access to certain apps, maybe some file shares, or even allow them to get into the domain. So that is a part when it comes to the on premises. So when it comes to the Azure, how is this identity and access management going to work? And what are those different areas where I can go and have this identity access management tagged to? So when we talk about AAD, it allows you to create those user IDs or groups, and we call them as identity and access management. And these user IDs and groups you use to give access to some applications which are hosted on cloud, or it could be the applications that which you have in-house, that which you develop. So your identity solution on cloud will help you to go and give access to your SaaS applications, which could be your HR applications, or which could be your Office 365, or maybe your ServiceNow, or the Zoom meeting, that whatever you're using. All these are available as software as service within the Azure. So you can go and create user IDs and groups, provide access to those applications which users can access. And these, again, as I said, these are SaaS applications. It's not only help you to go and provide access to the SaaS applications, you can also use other solutions like single sign-on. And if you're worried about the security of user, you can enable multi-factor authentication. And if you want to reduce the cost to your service desk for password resets and so on, you can enable self-service password resets. So these are all different solutions which will come across, which will come along with your Azure Active Directory. So to reiterate, an Azure Active Directory is an identity and access management solution that which you got on Azure, which will help you to create users and groups. And these users and groups that which you create will help you to go and provide access to your SaaS applications. And it's not only the SaaS applications. Let us say you have few admins for which you created user IDs on Azure Active Directory, and you can go and add them to the roles. So that we call it as role-based access control. Maybe that a particular guy called X might be an L2 administrator. You can go and add him to the respective roles. So your Azure Active Directory will help you to give access to the applications by using the groups. And it will also help or assign users to the roles that which they should be part of. So those are the two advantages of Azure Active Directory. Now, is Azure Active Directory same as Active Directory domain services? The answer is no. Now, why it is different and how it is different? Your Azure Active Directory is a flat model, we can call it as, in the sense you will not be able to use those Kerberos, or you will not be able to use those domain joins, or you will not be able to set up the group policies and all those things using Azure Active Directory. But there are other services called as Azure Active Directory domain service that can be used to get these services. So your Azure Active Directory is different from your Active Directory domain services. Okay, so let us move on and try to understand some terminology related to related to Azure Active Directory. So often we hear something called as tenant. Now, what is this tenant? And we also hear something called as directories or Azure AD directory. Now, a tenant is basically when you subscribe yourself, might be with your, when you subscribe yourself to Azure, it might be using your organization ID, or it might be your own personal ID. Then what it creates something called as tenant for you. So it basically something like when you go and subscribe yourself to a portal, maybe a portal like Amazon or whatsoever, they'll create an environment, they'll create an ID for you where you can go and purchase something. Similarly, a tenant. So a tenant is nothing but it's an instance that which gets created whenever you subscribe yourself to the Azure. And of course, each tenant will have a directory. A tenant can have multiple directories. And what is this directory will help you with? This will help you with the users and groups and binding with your Azure Active Directory. So what we understood so far is what is Azure Active Directory and what are these tenants and directories. Now to move on, now we had discussed that Azure Active Directory help you to go and create those users and groups within your Azure Active Directory service. Now this session will concentrate more on practical things rather the discussion too much of theory. So let us quickly jump into that service that which will help you or make you to understand how do we actually go and create user IDs and groups on Azure. Okay, so let me switch to my Azure portal. Now this is the portal where I logged in with my ID called as Vemula for you at hotmail.com. And you can see there's a default directory that which you can see it, right? Directory Vemula for you Hotmail. And of course, it also creates a domain, which is the default domain with your directory name .onmicrosoft.com. So this is the standard web. So whenever you subscribe yourself, so the domain, default domain, that what it creates is your email address .onmicrosoft.com. So that is a default domain. And what is the directory it creates? It creates a directory with your user ID and email address. So here it could be your personal ID. If you are subscribing yourself, or if you are creating a subscription, or if you are creating a tenant for your organization, then this could be your organization ID as well. So how do I access Azure Active Directory on Azure Cloud? So all you need to do is go and search for a service called as Azure Active Directory, right? So this is a service. So this service, that whatever will you see here, will help you to go and manage your identity and access management, or perform your identity and access management tasks. Now, a couple of very important things that which we need to understand. So if you're already working on Azure, whenever you create any resource on Azure, you go and select the subscription. Now, for example, if you're creating a virtual machine, or you're creating a storage account, then what you do, you tell your Azure that, okay, so this is the subscription to which you have to bill the cost of this particular resource. So when it comes to the Azure Active Directory, it will not bill based on your subscription. That billing is little different. So you have to get into now, if you look at this, what do you call it as my subscription, when I go and look at my Azure Active Directory, I got a premium P2, what do you call it as SKU, which means that I purchased premium P2. So this billing is different than the subscriptions that what you see when it comes to the other resource billing. So when you go and want to use Azure Active Directory, you need to go and pick what edition or what SKU you want to use. So Microsoft provides you with three, one is free, the other one is Office 365 Premium 1 and Premium 2. These are the different SKUs that which are available. And a few months back, there was another SKU called Basic, that which they removed it. Now they have these, what do you call it as 4 SKUs. One is free, which is the default one when you subscribe yourself or create a trial account. And if you're a customer where you want to use Office 365 apps, then you can go and subscribe Office 365 edition. And there are premium editions like P1 and P2. So based on the edition that which you go and purchase, your Active Directory features will vary. So whatever the features that which you get with this Azure Active Directory will vary. Now, what are those different features that which are available across different editions? There are certain common features across all, which are available across all the editions. For example, single sign-on. So, right, there is an unlimited availability, or this feature is available in all the editions. When it comes to the objects that which you create, when I say objects, it could be users and groups or service principal objects. So whatever. So if it's the basic, then you have a limit of 5 lakhs. If it is other editions, there is no limit as such. So based on the editions, if I go with the premium editions, there are features like password protection, which means what are those passwords you want to ban when somebody changes this password, tested@123, the commonly used one, right? You may want to ban that. So those type of features which are available here in premium edition, right? Now, soft password protection, self-service password reset, which will help you to reduce the calls to your what do you call it as service desk, right? And group access management and so on. So what I'm trying to explain here is, by default, when you go with a free trial, these are the features which are available. And if you want to go and look for the advanced features, then you have to go with premium editions. And of course, the cost will also vary based on the edition that which you choose. So if it is Office 365, then they have their own categories within Office 365 like E1, E3, E5, F1, and F3. And if it is premium one user, then you will be paying around 400 rupees per user per month if you are using an Azure Active Directory service. Now, if you are using a premium 2, then it is around 600 rupees per user per month. Now, Premium 2 has got these additional features like identity protection, which will help you to go and identify the risks or the vulnerabilities with an account. For example, if you are a user who generally log in from India, now all of a sudden you try to access your SaaS applications maybe from United States, then your Azure is intelligent enough to understand that there's a change in the location. Now it will ask you maybe some additional questions to go and re-authenticate yourself, or a confirmation email. Email will be triggered to your registered email address, and where you need to go and say that, hey, I am the right guy who is accessing this, right? So kind of. So these are the additional benefits that which you go and get when you go with premium editions like P1 and P2, right? Now, so that is little bit at a very high level about the different editions that which are available within Azure Active Directory. Right. So let us say that you want to use Azure Active Directory domain services to kind of provide access to the apps that which you got, the SaaS applications. Then how do and where do I start? Now, first, the edition that what I said, or this queue. Now, let us say that you went with a premium edition, or within that maybe P1 or P2. And then you go and start creating users. Now, this is how your users creation pane will look like, right? So you have here an option called as users. Now here you can create your users, right? You can go and create a bulk users. Maybe if you want to create hundreds of users, then you can create a bulk user by uploading what you call it as a spreadsheet, and then it creates your user IDs based on the input that whatever you provide in that CSV file. Now, let us say that you want to create manually a user. Then it asks you what type of user you want. You want a user, internal user, then you go and use this option, create user. Then if you have an external user like vendor or whatsoever, then you use this option, invite user. Let us assume that you are creating a user ID for internal purpose. And what is the default domain that which it picks when I create a user ID? So this is the default domain it picks. Now, as I said, when you subscribe yourself, it creates a domain. If you look at on the top, the domain name, Vemula for you hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. That's the default domain. So when I create user IDs, then I will be creating user at virtual Vemula for you hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. That's how your users will be created. So let us go and quickly create a couple of user IDs so that we understand things in a more detailed way. So let us say I want to create an internal user. So I select this create user option. Then I'll name this guy as user1. And then here you see your default domain that which is picked automatically. So then what will be your user principal name when you create this? Then it will be user1 at Vemula for you hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. So that's how your user ID will be created. So let me go and give the additional information. I'll name this as user1, then first name, last name, and of course the password. If you want to generate the password, you can do an auto generation, or if you want to set password for yourself, then you can select this option and set the password. So I want to go with auto generated password. Then you as an admin will go and copy this password and share this with your end user. So now what did we do is we created a user, or we are creating a user with the name called as user1 at Vemula for you hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. Now, what happens here? So this is the guy that which you created, right? User one. So this is your fully qualified, what do you call it as user principal name. I'm sorry. This is the user principal name, right? Let me copy this. So what you do is for your end user, you share this user ID and password. So what it does is he gets into whether it could be, let us say if he's an Azure administrator, then he can get into the Azure portal to perform the administrative activities. Or if he's a normal user, then he may be accessing some applications by using a portal called apps.microsoft.com, myapps.microsoft.com. So that we'll be seeing in a while. Now let us say that you want to create an external user. Now let us say you got a vendor and who frequently access your applications, then you can go and invite that user to get to get access to your applications or whatsoever. So there are two options. One is creation of the internal user and second one is the external user. Now if it is an external user, then what is that you need to provide? Name, maybe external user one, then his email address, his external email address. Let us say it is vijay.citrix@gmail.com. Let us say that is his email address. So it says it's already there. Let me use some other email address. What else I have? Right, maybe this email address, vemula4you@gmail.com, then his first name, right? User, maybe I'll name it as external user one, and then some message to that particular guy where you are triggering this notification. So I'll say that welcome to ABC. This email will help you to set up your access to ABC SaaS apps. Something like that. Now you go and invite this guy. Now he will get a notification. He'll get an email invitation. Then he will, let me quickly go to my email address and maybe I'll try to show you. Right, so this is the invitation that which you got, right? So now this says, okay, so this is the organization which is default directory. We'll understand how do we change all these things, and this is the message that which you sent to the external user. Then he has to accept, right? So he will be accepting this by clicking on this accept invitation. So once he clicks on the accept invitation, he will be asked to kind of go and authenticate or validate himself, right? And that ID will be active, right? That ID will be active, right? So let me quickly go ahead and authenticate myself so that, right? So I forgot these passwords, too many passwords, but let me try to see if I can. Okay, so I'll leave this here. So I think I forgot the password for this. But whatever the next steps, I'll try to explain you here. So once he clicks on this invitation, he will be redirected to this page where he validates his credentials, and his ID will be active. So this ID will become active, then he will be your user within the organization. So that's how a vendor user ID within the now you can see this vendor one which I had created earlier. So something like this you will get it. So you can create multiple user IDs for your vendors as well, right? So now what we had seen is we had seen user IDs creation for internal users and ID creation for the external users as well. Now, similarly, you can go and create groups, right? So you can group your users and maybe the application wise or maybe department wise and so on, right? So let us quickly create a group. Let us say that test group 1. Okay, so let us say 12. So this is a test group for some ABC project. And then so membership, whether it is assigned dynamic user or dynamic device, there is a feature called as dynamic addition. So these are all used when we use these dynamic features, but we'll go with the membership creation as assigned group, right? Let us go and create it. Now you can go and add users to the groups by going to the members and add all these users in your organization, whoever are part of this test group or whoever should be part of this test group 1. So likewise, you can create users and groups. But what are these groups and users used for? Now, as I said, you can assign what do you call it as applications to these groups, right? So if I go to this test group that which I created, maybe the test group 2 or whatsoever, if I go to the applications, I can add applications here. Or I can go to the application itself, I'll go to the enterprise applications, then I can select the application, then I can add groups and users here. So you are giving access to these SaaS applications so that your users, when they access this portal called as myapps.microsoft.com and they log into this portal, they will be able to see all those applications to which they got access to, and they will be able to get into that and perform their activities. So this is, as I said, purely for SaaS applications. Right now, I got into this portal. Now you see there is an application called Azure Portal, which is the default one because I am an administrator. Then I can manage my Azure activities by clicking on this portal icon. Right, so you can assign multiple applications to the users from here. So if you go to the apps, right, enterprise applications. And let us say your users are in need of this box application, then I'll go to users and groups, add user, select the users and groups, and then assign it. Now, whoever is part of this particular group will be able to see that application called as box whenever they get into this portal called as myapps.microsoft.com. So that's how you can create users and assign what you call it as applications to them, right? Now, this is how you go and create users and groups. Now, what is the problem we have here? The problem that what we have here is we are creating these user IDs using the default domain that what we have. Now, this is the default domain, right? So what is the default domain? User1 at Vemula for you hotmail.onmicrosoft.com. This is the default domain. Now I can change this default domain. So which organization want to use a domain or user IDs with this name? No organization, right? Now how do I change this? Is there a way to change this? Yes. So if I create any user ID, by default, it will be like this, right? All the user IDs will be something like this, user2 at Vemula for you, Hotmail on Microsoft.com and user 3 and so on. But my organization want to use the organization specific domain name rather using this default domain that which you get when you subscribe yourself. Now, in order to change this domain, the solution that what you have here within Azure is you have to go and create something called as custom domain. Now, custom domain will help you to go and change the default domain that whatever you get when you subscribe yourself. And when you add your own custom domain, when I say custom domain, your organization specific domain name, then you can create your user IDs like user1 at your organization name.com. Now, what is that I need in order to create a custom domain? What is that I have to do in order to use a custom domain in Azure Active Directory? The first step that what you need to have is you should have a domain or internet domain is the first requirement. Now, how do I get that? I need to go and purchase. If I don't have my own domain name on the internet, I need to go and purchase from the service provider, maybe GoDaddy or Google, or there are multiple vendors who can sell the domain names. So I should have my domain name registered on the internet. So in order to use a custom domain. So once I have that custom domain, once I have that domain name, then I need to go and add my domain name within Azure Active Directory. Once I add this domain name in Azure Active Directory, I need to verify this domain name. These are the steps. So once you verify the domain name, then you will be able to create user IDs with that custom domain that whatever you create. So let us see how do we do that. So I don't want to use this what do you call it as on Microsoft.com, as I said. Now for this testing purpose, I have a domain called as scriptingmonk.com. So let us say my organization name is scriptingmonk. And I want to use this scriptingmonk.com domain, and I want to create user IDs like user1 at scriptingmonk.com and so on, right? So that we can, so that I have my organization name there. So let us jump into the portal and see how do we do this. So within Azure Active Directory, you have this option called as custom domains. Now, you see there is a domain called, the default domain is listed here. What is the default domain? This is the default domain, right? Vemula for you, Hotmail on Microsoft.com. That is a default domain. And of course, there is one more domain which I added, which is virtualvemula.com, which is my own domain namespace, and I have the second one added. So within one tenant, you need to understand this a little bit. Within one tenant, you can have multiple domains or multiple directories rather. Now let me go and create a custom domain. How do I do that? Here I am in Azure Active Directory. You see here an option called as custom domains, and I need to go and add my custom domain name here. But before I add my domain name here, I should be purchasing this domain from my service provider, maybe one of the vendors. So here I have this domain which is purchased, which I purchased from GoDaddy. And I am here in the DNS settings of that domain called as scriptingmonk.com. So which means I have control, I have that access to manage my domain on GoDaddy. Now, if you don't have access to this level, then you will be working with GoDaddy support team to get whatever the changes that which are needed. We'll understand what are those changes that which are needed here. But you need to have access to modify your domain name. Okay, so I purchased this domain name called scriptingmonk.com. Now I'm here in Azure Active Directory. I'm adding this custom domain. and I give my custom domain something called as scriptingmonk.com and go and add it. So once I add it, what happens? Let me go back and see here. Scriptingmonk.com is added, but what is the status? It is unverified. So why is that unverified? So anybody can add any domain here, right? So in order to validate, in order to make sure that a right person is adding this domain in the custom domains, Azure demands verification. Now, what is that you need to do to verify? So it asks you to go and add a couple of records or one of these two records. You see two records here, one is text record and MX record. You need to go and add one of these records here on your DNS management. So you will get similar console if you have some if you purchase it from Google or some any other service provider or vendor. So because we are here in what do you call it as GoDaddy, I am here in the DNS management of scriptingmonk.com. Now here it will give me an option to add and modify the records. Now what is this custom domain is asking me? It is asking me, boss, go and add these records. Either you add text record or you add an MX record. Now let us say that you don't have access to these to this management console. Then what you can do is you can also share these details via email. So if you click that option called as share these settings via email, it will copy all the text into your email. You can just put your vendor email address or support GoDaddy support or Google support email address and send it to them so that they can add these records, right? So one of these records should be added. Right, so once you add them, then you click on this verify button, your Azure will go and looks for these records in the DNS on the domain name, and if finds this record, then it verifies successfully. That's how things will work here. Okay, so now I got access to this DNS management, so I can go and add a record here. So what type of record I want to add? I want to add a text record. Now it will ask, it is asking me these details, right? The host and the text value and then TTL. So the host here is @ so I'll go and put @ symbol here, and the text value is what you have here, go and put it here, and TTL I'll leave it as default. Now you added the text record, whatever Azure is asking you or Azure custom domain is asking you to go and add. And of course I can add MX record if I don't want to add text record. Either one will work. You do not have to add both of them. So now I added this. It is there here in my scripting mock domain, this record that whatever I need, I go and click on this verify option. So it takes a couple of minutes for verification. If all is good, then we'll be able to see this domain getting verified successfully. So let us wait for a couple of minutes. Hope I added it right. Let me quickly check that. Get the rate. So it may take a couple of minutes for verification. So once you see the once it is verified, you see something like this. Okay, so your domain will be added. Okay, so I'm just waiting for that. Where is this domain? Scripting mock. It's taking more time. It should not take this much time. Let's wait for a couple of minutes and see how it treats us. Or let me try adding MX record as well. So doesn't need, we'll try, if you can see, that will help us. Okay. See if there is any space or anything. Host name is at the rate, text value, and now save it. I'll add one more record, which is what is that, MX record, right? And in this MX record, host name is at the rate, right? And then it points to what? It points to this address, this, and the priority. Right. Leave that as is and add it. So we added both of them. Okay, so that goes right. So I think the second record is not needed, but it took some time to get things replicated. That's what my understanding is. But whatever the case. So now, what did you do? You go and added your organization domain name here. Right now, when I go and create my user IDs now if I go and create, let us say, user 2, then here I can go and pick, excuse me, my domain name. So all these 3 domains are listed here. Now I go and select my scriptingmonk.com, then I'll say that user 2, and of course the first name, last name, and then username, password, and then you will be creating user IDs like that. Now this time you used your organization specific, what you call it as, domain. Now you see this user 2 at scriptingmonk.com, right? So likewise you can create users and groups by using your custom domain with your organization domain name. Now you got away from this problem of using the default domains, whatever you get. Now you change that to your organization specific domain name. Now you create user IDs and groups. Now there is still problems here. Now what are those problems? Let us try to understand. If it is a real-time scenario, then what will be the problems here? Let us say that you are organization, as I said, scriptingmonk.com, right? And this is your, let us say, on-premises environment. And you adopted cloud and you are into a hybrid model, let us assume. So you have workloads on Azure cloud and you have workloads on premises, both. Now on premises, you are using your Azure, you are using your Active Directory domain services. I'll name it as ADDS, okay? It is easy for us. And you use this domain, same domain called scriptingmonk.com. monk.com. And you create your organization users here using this scripting monk.com, and your users will be user1 at scriptingmonk.com, 2 at scriptingmonk.com, and so on. And you use maybe your line of business applications, LOB applications for authentication and authorization. Use this AD domain services. This is how your on-premises environment is. Now on cloud, let us assume that you use some SaaS applications. Maybe you use Office 365, or you use something called as maybe ServiceNow, maybe Zoom, and multiple applications, SaaS applications. Now for that, what you did is you created, I think this triangle is not the right symbol, but I assume that this is AD, Azure Active Directory, AAD. And here you created a custom domain, and you are creating user IDs here. You're creating user IDs here. Now every user has got 2 user IDs now. One user ID on Azure Active Directory, the other user ID on premises in their Active Directory domain services. So which is tedious, right? So for your user to go and have 2 user IDs, maybe the same username but different passwords. Now these are the problems when you don't integrate your on-premises Active Directory domain services with your Azure Active Directory. So to get away from this problem, to come out of this multiple users, multiple passwords, complexity, and so on, Azure provides you a solution to integrate your Active Directory domain services with your AAD. You can integrate these two. What does this integration means? This integration means I can go and replicate my user IDs, whatever I have on premises, to my Azure Active Directory. So it means if I have 1,000 users on premises, I can replicate all those user IDs to my Azure Active Directory, rather creating another set of users, or rather creating duplicate users or 2 users for the same user IDs for the same user. Now this can be achieved by using something called as Azure AD connector. Now Azure AD connector is a tool excuse me, which will which will be able to help you to integrate your on-premises Active Directory domain services with your Azure Active Directory. So let us go and quickly try to understand how does this actually work. So I'm not getting into too much discussions on the user IDs creations and other stuff, because those are all basic things, and we discussed to an extent whatever is needed. Beyond that, I don't think we are going to go and discuss anything. So these are things that which we should be concentrating on, our more interesting part. So for this, what I did here, we have a lab where we created a domain environment, and I have this domain controller. Let us say this is your on-premises, and an on-premises you have this domain called scriptingmonk.com, and all your users, corporate users, has got their IDs here. So let us create a couple of user IDs. Okay, so on-prem, let me name it as a little different. Okay, because I have virtualvemula.com, maybe there might be some conflict of user IDs, but to avoid the confusion. Okay, so let me go and create on-prem user 1. Okay, so let us name something like this. And this guy has got a user ID on premises. And let us assume that he also accesses some, what do you call it, as applications on Azure Cloud, SaaS applications, software as service applications. And I also have user 2 who does the same thing. So let me go and set the password for this guy. And let us say we create a couple of groups. Let us say on-prem. Okay, so I'll say that scripting mock group 1, GRP1. I'll create a security group and let us add these guys to this group. Okay. Right. So let us say that this is your on-premises environment. And these guys, the on-prem user 1 and user 2 does have a requirement to access your software as service applications, or maybe they want access to the Azure portal. They are, let us say, sysadmins who perform those system administration activities. Now, if we go with the earlier solution, right, without this AD connector, now what I have to do, I have to go and create user IDs for them here, right? So I have to go and create on-prem user 1 and then password, and he will have one user ID on premises, one user ID here on Azure Active Directory. Now we want to avoid that. Now what is that we are doing here? We are using this solution called as AD connector. Now how does this work? So AD connector is a tool that which you will be installing on a domain joined server. That's the first prerequisite. So this tool need to be installed on a domain joined server. So which means on premises you deploy a server, join it to the domain called as scriptingmonk.com, and then you install this AD connector on it. Now because it is a lab, so I'm going to go and install this AD connector on my domain controller itself, but in production environment, we don't deploy these on domain controllers. We set up a separate server, add it to the domain and install this AD connector on that particular server, then configure it so that this synchronization will get enabled. So let us see how do we go and perform this, right? So for that, as I said, I need to download a tool called as Azure AD Connector or AD Connect. Right, it's a small tool. It's an MSI file. And what are the system requirements? You can install on 2012, 2012R2, 16 and 19. So let me quickly go and download this. It's around 100 MB file. And this connector tool you will be installing, as I said, on a separate server in the production, but because we are doing on lab, so I can install this on my domain controller itself. Right, I'll copy this one and copy it to my domain controller where I'm going to go and install this connector. Now using this connector, I'm binding or I'm bridging these on-premises directory services with my Azure Active Directory. Right. So it's a simple installation. Let us quickly install this. Right. So this is how your Azure AD Connect looks like. Now, what does it say? The English here says Azure Active Directory Connect integrates your on-premises and online directory services. Okay, so that's what it does. Now, license agreement, I'll say I agree and continue. Now, once I go to the next step, I see here two options. One is called as express settings and the second one is customize. Now, customize will pick the default settings when it comes to the installation of this Azure Active Directory Connect. We don't want to go with express settings. Let us go with customize so that we understand few settings there. So what does it ask? It asks you these questions when it comes to the custom. So installation directory, whether you want to change it, go and check box, click this and change the directory. I don't want to change this, that's fine. And the second option is SQL Server. Now your Azure AD Connect need a database instance. Now if you have a SQL Server, a managed or enterprise SQL Server, then you go and specify your SQL Server name, instance name, and of course, it creates a database with a name called as ADSync. Now, if you are a small organization and you don't have a SQL Server, then you deselect that, then deselect this option. Then what this installer does is it installs your SQL Express and creates whatever the instance or the database required on that particular SQL Express database. So most of the times in the production environment, we go with a SQL Server, enterprise SQL Server, and then we specify those details here so that it goes and puts that configuration in your database. And then it asks a service account. Now, this service account is basically used for what do you call it as running the services and other stuff, right? Now, if you don't select, then what it does is it runs using a system account. And you can specify the custom groups as well. Now, initially, you may not want to replicate everything. Then you may want to specify only certain groups that which you want to replicate. Then you can specify this, right? These are the options. So let me, I leave everything as default. The reason why I selected these is just to take you through what are those options that which are available. Now I'll click on install. Now if you see it, it installs SQL Express local database and it installs synchronization service. We'll wait for a minute or so that it completes and asks for further configuration, right? So it does ask for the configuration. So it is installing that synchronization service. Now it is asking your configuration. Now these are all very important configuration settings. Now you are saying that I want to synchronize my users and groups, whatever I have here, to this. Okay, so you are synchronizing, that's fine, but do you want to synchronize your passwords as well? When I say password, it's password hash. It's not password, it's password hashes. So do you want to synchronize the password hashes as well? Now these are the different options that which you got when it comes to the password management. Now the first option, it says password hash sync. So in the sense, on Active Directory domain services, the way things will work is your password will not be kind of replicated as is. There will be a hash using some algorithm which will get generated, and using that hash, the authentication will happen. Similarly, now whether you want to synchronize that password hash to Azure Active Directory along with the user ID, so both user ID and password hash will be synchronized. And every 2 minutes, your Azure Active Directory domain services will be going and checking if there are any changes in that. Maybe the password hash value or whatsoever. So then it gets the updated ones. That's how things will work. So the first option, what it is asking you here is whether you want to go with password hash synchronization. Some organizations are comfortable going with this. And if you are a financial or banking organization, then you may not want to go with this due to some regulatory requirements. So, and then you may go with pass-through authentication. Now, what does this pass-through authentication does? It sends the validation of credentials. Whenever the validation of credentials are required, it will send back to your on premises where your authentication is validated. So that is your second option. And let us say you have trusted third-party federation services, then you go with these federation options. So I don't know what these other two options, the other option federation with ping federate and do not configure it self-explanatory. We can configure it at later part of time. But these are the different options that you have when it comes to the synchronization. So let us say that I am comfortable in synchronizing my password hashes as well, then I can go with this first option. And then when I say next, then it will ask me, boss, provide those credentials so that I can go and authenticate myself to Azure Active Directory. Now this tool has to go and authenticate itself, right? So the tool that whatever you are installing here on your domain controller has to go and authenticate itself to your Azure Active Directory domain services, AAD. So in order to do that, you need to provide some credentials, and that credentials should be part of a group called as Global Administrators Group. Or the credentials that whatever you specify here should be part of a role called as Global Administrator role. Now what is this Global Administrator role? So Global Administrator role is a role which will enable that particular user, whoever is part of that role, to manage your entire Azure Active Directory. You can, it is equivalent to your like enterprise admin privileges when it comes to the Active Directory domain services, super user kind of stuff. So I need to go and add one of my users to, what do you call it as, this enterprise admin group, right? So let me go and pick one of the user IDs. Maybe let me go with this guy, user2 at scriptingmonk.com. So we have the user IDs and password for that, right? So this guy, user ID and password. So let me go and add this guy, user2, to a role called as Global Administrator role. I'm adding him to the global admin. Okay, so now if you read this English here, the description, what does it say? A global administrator can manage all the aspects of Azure Active Directory and Microsoft services that use Azure AD identities. So that is this role is all about. Okay, now user 2 is part of global administrator role, but I need to log in at least once using this user ID and change the password. Otherwise, I'll not be able to authenticate because we just created the user ID, right? So let me go and get into an incognito window. I'll use this portal.azure.com and I'll use this guy's username password. Sign in and give current password, give new password. And then what do you call it as, you authenticate yourself. Right now, I have this user ID, which is part of global administrator group. Now I can go and add this guy here, right? I can authenticate this particular, what do you call it as, tool by using the global administrator role or user ID with global admin privileges. Now let me go and put this. What is that user ID? It is user2 at scriptingmonk.com. And of course the password. What is the password? I should not tell that. I'll put it here. Right. Now it goes and validates, verifies the credentials. Okay, restart AD connect. What is the problem here? Okay, so it is asking me the credentials one more time. I'll go and put the credentials again and give the password. Now it verifies and it examines the domains that which you have there on Azure Cloud. Now it is asking the second step. Now you authenticated yourself to your Azure Active Directory. Now this tool has to authenticate itself to your Active Directory domain services. Now that's what it is asking here. Boss, help me to talk to your domain or your forest. Now how do I do that? Add directory. Now what does it ask? It asks me user ID with enterprise admin privileges. So I'll name it as scripting. I'll put this scripting mock .com / I haven't created any user ID, but generally we'll use a service account kind of stuff. I'll use administrator here. Right, so you are authenticated and your directory is added. Now your tool is your tool got authenticated with your Azure Active Directory and your on-premises Active Directory domain services. Right, now what does it ask next? Right, so it is asking, okay, now what is that attribute? What are those attributes that which should be listed here once the replication is done? So once your replication is done, under the users, you will see all those users, whatever you have on premises listed here. Now, if you want those user IDs, whether they should be listed using user principal name or whether they should be listed with a title or whatsoever. So what is that attribute that which you want to use as Azure Active Directory username? That's what it says. Now we'll leave this as user principal name because that's how things will be. Say next. Now, if you want to filter things, you may not want to replicate your entire domain. You may want to replicate only a part of domain or only maybe organization unit kind of stuff, then you can go and filter the replication. So now if you select users, only the users folder will be replicated, not the other folders that which are listed here in the scripting mode. Otherwise, by default, it replicates everything, all domains and OUs. So that is a default because we have just two IDs, then you can go. But if your organization has got some thousands and thousands of user IDs, then you may have to look at this option of filtering things. Otherwise, you will be flooding your, you will be dumping all your user IDs to your, or you're replicating all your user IDs to your Azure Active Directory, which might not be needed. Right. So uniquely identifying users. I'll leave this as default. Further filtering, if you may want to filter further for testing purpose only certain group and all those things, then you can do it here by further filtering. And some other options very important is password write back, whether you want to use. If somebody changes the password or if you're changing password on AAD, whether it has to replicate it back to your on-premises and so on, right? So these are few settings. I'll say next, and it configures your Azure Active Directory, and then when you click on install, it synchronizes. It synchronizes as well. So let us wait for a minute. So now what it does is it creates all those services, deploys all those services, and configures here Azure Active Directory for synchronization, right? And in some time you will be seeing those user IDs replicating here. These are all my earlier email address, which user IDs, which is on virtualvemula.com. But you can see your scripting monk user IDs as well created here, right? So let us wait for this one to get completed. So in the meantime, what is this? Okay. Okay, the question is, will the users created on Azure will be replicated back to on-prem AD? No. So it is one-way replication. Whatever the user IDs you have on Active Directory domain services will be replicated back to your Azure Active Directory, not the other way. And, no, so Yogesh, the answer for your question is, see the user ID, if you are creating an external user ID, that user ID should be a Microsoft, what do you call it as user ID. You got that, right? So you need to go and have that user ID created as Microsoft user ID. So that's the reason you may not be able to, access it. But if it is a Hotmail or others, Hotmail user ID or something, then it doesn't throw those errors. But if we are using other than Microsoft Live account or Hotmail, then you have to make that as a Microsoft account. Then you will be able to use it. What else? Okay. So any other questions? Please put them on.
Vijay, so one of the our attendee has asked one question like, I have on-premise different domain name and Azure AD domain different name. Is it possible to connect?
You can do it. You can replicate it, but it is kind of not standard. What do you call it as things? Now, if you want to use a different domain name for AAD, then you can do it. It still allows you to go and replicate, but for me, it is not a standard that generally we use. Okay, so let me quickly look into this. If we have these user IDs replicated, okay. Oh yeah, so if you look at these two user IDs, this one's on-prem user 2 scripting monk and on-prem user 1 scripting monk. These are the two user IDs that which you created, right? Now this got replicated. Now as and when you create the user IDs, they will get replicated to your Azure Active Directory. Now, how do I identify which one is on-premises replicated user ID and which one is Azure created user ID? Now, anything which is listed as Windows Server AD as a source, that is a replicated user ID. Anything that which is listed as Azure Active Directory, it means that it is created here on Azure Active Directory, right? So Windows Server AD is a user ID which got replicated from your on-premises directory services. And if it is Azure Active Directory, then it is a user ID which is created here on Azure Active Directory. So that's how you identify, which user ID is from where. Let us quickly go back and look at the group SK. What was that group which we created? SMGP1. Now you'll see that group also got replicated. Okay. Now this guy, let us say this group is a group for your Active Directory domain administrators. Let us assume so. Now I can go and add this group to the roles, right? Now you can go and add, if you go back to the groups, Okay, where is that roles? Let me go to the roles and administrators, and then global administrator. I can add this guy, this group to this global administrators, right? So what is that? SM. Okay, I think there is a limitation with this one, maybe because of the subscription that what I have. I can go and add individual users, maybe on-prem, okay, user one scripting monk, on-prem user two scripting monk, right? So because of the license issues, I don't have the ability to add groups, but I can add those individual user IDs. Now this guy, whoever is your on-premises user, will be able to get into your Azure portal. Let me get into the incognito, and I'll say that portal.azure.com. Let me log in the user ID which I logged in earlier. Log out. And then I log in with this another user ID, which is on-prem user one at scriptingmonk.com. And then the password. There you go. Now this guy, whoever is your on-premises directory services user, whose user ID got replicated to your Azure Active Directory, has got those permissions to manage your directory services. I'm sorry, Azure Active Directory. Now we'll be able to do all those things that which, creation of user IDs, creation of custom domains, and all those things are very much possible here, right? Right? So that's how things will work actually when it comes to this integration part, right? Now he can do it. He can do all those global administrative tasks. So that's how you can integrate. So I'm just showing this with the portal, but this can be used, these replicated user IDs can be used to provide access to your SaaS applications and other stuff. Okay, so that brings to the end of what I want to show, because this is not more next slide. So whatever is listed here is discussed anyway. So that's all I have. I would go and let me see if I can unmute. I will allow you to unmute yourself. And if you guys have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Hey, Vijay, this is Gaurav.
Yeah, Gaurav.
I have one question. So let's say I have so many DC servers in my domain. So in that case, do I need to create multiple Azure AD connector server as well, just for the AJ purpose, so that if one server is not available?
You will replicate your domain. That's how it is, right? So you are not, it is not related to your domain controllers, it is related to your domain. Maybe you have multiple domains in your forest, then if that is your requirement, then you can replicate all those domains. You can do that, but it is more a domain specific replication, not has nothing to do with your domain controllers. So if you have multiple domains and that is what your requirement is, you can do it.
So one Azure connector server will be like a sufficient to have to duplicate like all my data.
Yes. So because we had, yeah, you can do that across multiple domains. When we authenticated ourselves during the configuration part, it was asking the forest or the domains, right? So there you select your domains or the forest. All those subdomains will be automatically added.
Okay.
Is it possible to delegate global administrator activities to some members of a particular team? Yes. So it's all, you create a group, right? So you create a group and add that group to the role, right? So whatever the members you have as a part of that group, because I'm not able to add that group because of my subscription limitations. Groups are not allowed if you have, I think it's basic. So that's the reason I'm not able to add.
Hi, Vijaya. This is Vivek. So I just wanted to know some more about, like, you defined how the users will be synced, but what about the computer objects?
Okay, so computer objects replication, see here it is, as initially said, your AAD, you can add your devices, but it is not similar to your Active Directory stuff, right? So if you look at here, devices, now for this user ID, you can go and add devices. He can add himself, let us say I'm using a Windows 10 laptop, and I use some SaaS applications, and by using this Azure Active Directory, I can add devices. And that devices will help you, like, what do you call it, as enterprise roaming related solutions and all those things, but it will not have that solution that which you get with your Active Directory domain services. For that, you have to go and use another solution called as Azure AD domain service, or extend your on-premises domain services to Azure. So that's how it will work here. So how to troubleshoot the synchronization issues? Okay, so you have a few command lines which are available, or you have here within the tool within the server where you install this tool. You'll see AD Connect and then editor service, and these are the tools that which will help. But there are certain command line tools which will help you to go and check the replication. You can also come here to the Azure AD Connect, which will give you the overall health status, right? So what is the sync status? When was that it was replicated last time, and whether password hash is enabled or not. But you do have what do you call it as you do have certain command line tools which we did discuss today, but there are tools which you can go and look at, which will help you to find out what do we call it as whether things are replicated or not. Can we create group policies? Azure Active Directory, as I said initially, does not support group policies. It is a flat model. It is used only for enabling authentication to your SaaS applications and role-based access control to your Azure portal. If you want to go with group policies, you have another solution called as Azure AD domain services, right? This we will be using, which is a managed domain. Or you have a site-to-site VPN, replicate your on-premises domain controller through your site-to-site VPN to the domain controllers on the cloud, and use the domain controllers on the cloud for authentication and authorization. That's how it will work. On-premises domain name is different. I think I answered this. In which circumstances will go with federation services? Okay, so federation services, let us say you acquired some organization. Maybe you can go and use that organization directory services by using the federation. So you trust those services, directory services, on your third party, and federate means use those credentials to authenticate yourself. For that, you need ADFS and other solutions on your on-premises environment. What else I have? So guys, you can unmute and ask if you have any questions. It's very tough for me to read all those things, whatever are typed here. If you have any questions. Multi-factor authentication, it needs a premium. We will plan another session. If you go to the user IDs, then you will be able to see the multi-factor authentication methods, right? here you see require multi-factor authentication, and then you configure it, but that does need a premium subscription to use the multi-factor authentication solution.
Hi, this is Kamruddin Qureshi. Is it possible to schedule a next lecture on, as I don't know how you plan, but is it possible to schedule a lecture on advanced Azure AD level? Like,
Yeah, we'll do. So this is we had last week a session on migrations where we had shown how do we migrate on-premises to Azure, and this week we started directory services integration with the AAD right from the basics, and then we'll try to plan the next level after this could be using, as I said, somebody was asking multi-factor authentication and self-signed password reset kind of stuff, and then access to the applications or dynamic group
RBAC and conditional
additions.
access configuration.
Yeah. So conditional access, those things we will plan. Maybe I think not next week, upcoming week, we'll have another session. Just wait for my email. Those whoever are subscribed today will be getting email notification with the next session details.
What
Hello,
about
Vijay.
Citrix sessions? You are an architect of Citrix as well, so.
so I cannot do everything, buddy. So it's just out of my interest. I'm just giving these sessions just to kind of, it's my hobby as well, to share the knowledge and other stuff. We'll plan. Okay, so we'll see how things will as we move on. But right now my concentration is more on Azure, because we have many people who want to upskill themselves to the Azure, infrastructure services. So that's the reason we are planning this.
Hello, Vijay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great things which you showed and everything. It was really great. It was really appreciative as well. So I'm just asking before this thing like this Azure AD, you might have conducted some past Azure lectures as well, right?
Uh-huh.
Hello.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We did.
So that's what this is my first session which I have joined. So before that I haven't joined any sessions. So can I get a recording of the past sessions to overcome with those to have the look of those all those things?
Yes, I'll share those things. Maybe you'll be receiving an email today in some time, maybe tomorrow in the afternoon hours with my channel, YouTube channel details, where you get all my previous recordings and the recordings that whatever we had. Right. So
Okay, fine. So when how frequently do you conduct the sessions? What will be the future session? I just wanted to have
so
this updated.
depends on my timings. Okay, so I don't have a
Okay.
specific schedule, but this month we had back to back. The other week we had VMware to Azure migration, and this week on Azure Active Directory. So we'll continue with identity and access management next week, and then we'll see.
Okay, fine. So better just once again to reiterate that, just help us with these previous recordings as well. So it will be us for to have this common sync to
Def-
over
def-
these things.
Definitely, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks, Vijay. Yeah.
Yeah, hi Vijay, Yogesh here. As you showed about the invitation guest user invite.
Yeah.
So that same issue has occurred with me also.
Yeah.
And another issue occurred with me is that it was asking to create an account in Azure via invitation link.
No, it will validate that. See, what will happen is, so once you create this guest user ID, I don't have another email address I would have shown you. You will get a notification. Okay, so that notification will help you whatever we had seen here, right? So when you click here, now if this is already a Microsoft account, which means that if you have this user ID, this whatever Vemula for you at gmail.com is part of Microsoft, accounts, then you will be able to use that. Otherwise, you have to create that account. So that's what it will ask you to create. Then it will goes and gives or activates that ID, whatever you see here, right? So maybe I think next time when we meet, I'll show you that. I don't have another email address. I would have created one email address before I started this session, but that's what is needed actually.
Actually, I came with two scenarios, same as one of the scenario which you had today, and another scenario is that I sent the invitation link to Gmail ID, and that Gmail ID, when I tries to log in with the Gmail ID and password, it asks me to create accounts with same Gmail ID, and then only I can proceed further. So
Okay. So maybe I think I'll try to spend some time next week, initially 5-10 minutes in our next session on this one. We'll see. I'll be able to show you how exactly it works actually. So that is simple, straightforward.
okay. Thank you. It was a nice session. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If no questions, I'm done for today.
Please do share the recordings of previous lecture and this lecture also.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thanks for the time.
Bye, Vijay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vijay. Such a nice session.
You're welcome, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks, Vijay. Like, it's really appreciated that you are sharing your knowledge and to the community as well. That's really great. Thank you.
You're welcome, Matt.
And moreover, Vijay, here it is Atanu again. Moreover,
Yeah.
whatever the knowledge you are sharing over here, it is completely free. And nowadays, it is very tough to get such, mentality to get such a free session. And it's really very informative. Really hats off.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you for the response, Atanu. Ramesh here.
Hi, Ramesh. Yes.
Thank you for your feedback. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Ramesh.
Hello, Vijay. Hello.
Yeah, someone will go ahead.
Yeah, hi, this is Santosh. I hope had a great section today. So I have a quick question for you. Do we have any session like a migration of accounts from one domain to other domain? How the trust created there? Could you all explain this kind of stuff? If possible, if you have any recordings, could you share that?
I don't have any recordings on that. So it's more domain migration. We'll see if we can plan something in future because there are many things that which are lined up. We'll see, mate. We'll try to see if we can cover that. Yeah.
Hey, thanks a lot for that.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Thanks for joining, and good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bro.
Right, Vijay.
Thank you, Vijay.